Hi, in our last guide video we assembled the case itself, and I made a short video earlier where I print a new bottom shell with slightly better clearance for the rear USBs. In this video I'm going to show you the electronics kit and how to install it. Okay, this is the kit. Here's the main control board. This is the USB extension cable. The NFC module. The front buttons and LED. The latch for the cartridge slot. And this is a guide piece to help line up the buttons in the front of the case. And that's what we're going to do first. So for this part you'll need your 3D printed button caps. Now they're quite a tight fit, so you might need to adjust the hole here with a craft knife or something, but they should just clip on to the front of the buttons. Okay, there we go. Now you want to line up the buttons with the front of the case there. Make sure you can that's it, make sure you can get them pressed. Now using this piece here, it's going to slide like that over the bottom, and you'll want to glue this in place and then glue it into the bottom of the case there. Now I like to use super glue for this, but you could use acetone if your case is printed in ABS, or epoxy, or any sort of plastic glue that will bond well. Okay, well actually that was quite difficult to catch on camera. I couldn't really see through the viewfinder very well, so I've gone ahead and glued that in. That's just going to dry up now. I did forget to mention that at this point you would want to glue in your LED lens into the front there, but I don't have any transparent filament at the moment, so I'll have to do that later on. Buttons are nice and secure now. They click in and out really firmly, all the clearances are good. The next step is to install the Raspberry Pi board itself. So we need to take our board and our USB extension cable. Now this blue part, just plug into the bottom two USB ports there, like that, and then we need to feed the cable just underneath the board and up through there. We can now take the board and install it in the case. So line up your ports at the back, get those pushed in. Be careful of the cable here, try not to pinch that, but you should be able to get the board in nice and flat. So now you want to just screw down the board. So take some M2 6mm screws and your printed washers, and put a screw in each of the corners. Okay, actually these screws were fine without the washers, but they have poked out underneath it a little bit, which is a bit annoying, so maybe I'll print some thinner ones next time. Okay, the front USB ports can now be pushed into the slot there, and what you want to do is kind of rotate it so it's that way round. Line it up. You should be able to just squash it down, push it down there into the front. Okay, the next step is to install the main control board. At this point, if you did have a heatsink, you could install it now. I've got one here with just a self-adhesive back. Just pull it off to expose the thermal tape, and that should just stick on there to the CPU. You want to align it this way if you can. Just means that any airflow is going to go through the veins of the heatsink nice and easily. Probably doesn't make a great deal of difference, but it also helps with clearance. So on the bottom of the main control PCB, you've got a black plug that plugs into the Raspberry Pi itself. We have a micro USB port which sticks out the back, and a plug here for the buttons. So you want to plug that in now, and the plug will only go in one way, so if you get a bit of resistance, just flip it over. It should plug in nice and securely. It doesn't click, but you'll know when it's in. Now, to install this, you want to line it up with the back, so kind of get the USB port in the right place. Give it a little push this way, and then lever down the connector there. Now this connector, this black connector, is going to go on the very rightmost pins as we look at it here. So these 10 pins over here on the right. But as long as you've got the back USB lined up, it should only fit on the back pins. That's quite difficult to see through the camera, but there we go. Okay, that's it in. You can kind of tuck away the cable there, doesn't really matter. Kind of wrap it around there. Okay, on to the top half of the case. Now the top half of the case is where we mount the NFC reader and the optional fan. I have changed the design of the fan mount slightly, just made it a little bit shorter so that it rides a bit higher in the case. If you have already had your fan mount printed, then you can modify it by just cutting that down a little bit shorter, and that will allow it to sit higher up in the case and not interfere with the electronics underneath. The NFC reader needs to sit, as we look at it, in the bottom right corner of the cartridge bay there, and I like to use little sticky glue dots to fix it, because we've got two nice smooth surfaces here, and it means I can always remove it later on. You can of course use super glue or epoxy or whatever you want to hold it on. So Just get that lined up, something like that. Excellent. Now, before we close up the case, we need to install the cartridge latch. Now, as it comes, it has these little wings on here, and we don't need these. They just get in the way. So you want to take a craft knife or some scissors and cut those off. Don't have to be too neat, it doesn't have to be flush, they just need to be out of the way. Now this will just drop straight into the cup there, and if you push it down it will click into place. And before we close up, we need to plug in the NFC Reader, and that plugs into this header here, and it's the same as the buttons, only goes in one way. So don't try and force it if it doesn't go in. Just flip the cable around and you should be alright. Okay, now the case should just go back together. Kind of line up the corners, make sure the cable's not being pinched too much. There we go. So we've now got two micro USB ports around the back. The bottom one is the one that's built into the Raspberry Pi. If we plug our power into that one, then it will boot up straight away. But the top one is the one that we can control using our front buttons. So if I just grab an SD card, I might be able to show you that just quickly now. So plugged into the top slot there. And if we hold down our reset button, it's going to start to power up. You can see the status lights of the Raspberry Pi there through the vent, so it's just booting up now. So in our next video, I'll show you how to set up the software for the Raspberry Pi, configure the NFC Reader and program some cards. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you soon.